Welcome to Flame On. I am your host, Brian. I'm here on our weekly Rainbow Spotlight series where we feature queer and allied creatives from all over the world. And tonight, especially all over the world from a scant, 20, 30 miles, I think, from me in Seattle. It's Butch McLogic. Oh, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
If I threw a stone, I'm sure I'd hit you.
Butch, thank you for joining us. So for those who are not familiar, Butch is a queer cartoonist, illustrator, and creator, predominantly with Class Comics, correct?
Yep.
And I'm sorry, say again?
Entirely with them, yeah.
Entirely. And your newest work that we're going to talk a lot about, because I'm very excited about this title, is TUG. And I have to be very careful. I'm going to put a screenshot of the cover that has been doctored to not trip any censorship things. Yes. TUG the Chronosexual #1, also available from Class Comics, digital and print. Tell me about TUG. I know this is not the first issue in the TUG series, but tell me about who TUG is, what kind of gave you the idea for TUG, and sort of what this new episode of the Chronosexual is about.
Should I start with like a history of TUG or like
absolutely?
Okay. Well, I work in the games industry. This is going to be a long story. I guess we've got an hour to kill, so why not? And I mainly do did pixel pushing at the time. And that was kind of seemed to be going on the out at the time. Like this is like 12 years ago now or something, or quite a while ago, I'm trying to think. So I was looking for a way to, brush up on my concept drawing skills. And I figured, well, I jumped onto the idea of like, why not do some, if I'm going to do figure drawing, why not make some money at it or do something interesting with it? So I thought, oh, well, I'll make a gay porn comic. I also really liked the fact that it was, the idea that it was scandalous, and, I kind of like that idea. But so I just started doing it. Like I really had no real story in mind. I didn't plan anything, which was totally stupid. Don't ever do that. If you're going to start a comic, like make sure you've got a bit of an idea behind you. But anyways, so I got about halfway through and I realized, you know what, this could actually be interesting. I'm going to have to actually work out a story and keep going forward with it if I want to keep going forward with it. So I also, throughout my life, have sort of suffered from depression at times, not anymore so much, but in my earlier years. Mm-hmm. And something that really helped me get out of that was I don't know why I looked it up, but I looked up enlightenment, and it got me, like at the time, I don't remember why I did that. There was probably a good reason. And I went down sort of this Zen Buddhist path, and I started exploring the idea of non-duality, and it's sort of a Eastern philosophy. And a lot of people who are into it might say that it's actually at the root of all religions. It's the idea that there's not the idea that there's more than one thing is illusory. There's only actually one giant whole. We're all one thing. That sounds very familiar, whether you're Christian or Buddhist or whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so I thought I was really into it at the time. I still kind of am. I don't really think about it a whole lot, but it's a great source for material. So I thought, why not combine some erotica or porn or whatever you want to call it with this totally out there, something you wouldn't expect to normally combine with porn and see what comes out of it. Because I wanted to do something interesting. I don't usually like doing things that, treading the same paths that everyone else has treaded. So, and so you'll find hints of that information in there. And I think I really enjoy trying to communicate that stuff in this setting just because it's so bonkers. And I just think it makes for a better story. anyways, so there I am. I'm just, learning how to draw. I didn't know where I was going to go. So I asked my friend Ken Bosem. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a pretty famous figure locally, like in the zine community, etc. And actually, you should probably get him on the show because he's a really interesting character.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think he does a lot of like historical stuff and like gay historical stuff.
Oh, excellent.
And not even gay, like just pure history stuff. And he's super into comics and everything. So, anyways, but he told me about Class Comics, and I had finished this thing. It was in black and white at first, and I just sent it to them on a whim because I thought, like, who the hell else? Otherwise, I'm just gonna have to publish this online or something. And they loved it. So that was the beginning of my, relationship with Patrick and Fraser. I use the relationship is probably maybe a strong word, but I mean, like, they're super great guys. I love them. They've been so supportive, and Class Comics, man, they're the best.
It's so funny that as soon as you started talking about them, we had Robert appear.
Oh, hi.
Your co-collaborator on Beautiful Dead.
Yeah.
And what, co-publisher with Nathan at Class? Is that right? Is that his title? I'm not sure.
He's sort of, I mean, he'd probably be better to speak to about this, but I mean, he's sort of like, Patrick deals with the more artistic side of things, and Fraser deals with more with like the
business.
Yeah, the gears, so to speak. So
okay, great. Also, real quick, while we're doing comments, our buddy James Figueredo, welcome. Good to see you. Another illustrator who's actually doing this excellent X-Men a Day series on Twitter and Facebook. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you should check him out. So that's how you got started with Class, and the idea of TUG, sort of like you said, brings in elements of dualism,
non-dual philosophy. Yeah,
non-dual philosophy.
People might see it as Zen Buddhism. It's not quite exactly that, but it's in that area.
So how do you marry the erotic comics, like the sex components, into the story elements that are clearly from like different areas? And how do you, as a creator, how do you find a way to really balance those two in an interesting story that's also really sexy and keeps the people who are really enjoying the art, let's say, interested?
I don't know if there's a really good answer for that. I mean, I try to it's a porn comic. It's got to have, sexy stuff in there. And I love that aspect of it. So I try to sort of maybe split it evenly. I try to like keep a balance of the two. Like, I don't feel like the first comic I made was definitely more intended to be a porn comic, like every panel is basically like a vignette of like, sexy stuff, sexy farmhands, and like, people doing things that are, that you wouldn't discuss with your parents.
We won't share this video with them, but no. Just in reading erotica and reading erotic comics, I like Class's work and I was exposed to this years and years, like probably over a decade and a half ago. Like in DC, there's a gay bookstore. There was Lambda Rising. And I would go in that bookstore, and they had a spinner rack with Class Comics. And I had never really seen anything like that up until that moment. And this was, and it was just, it's transformative for me because as a very young out gay man, but also a comics fan myself, it was such a nice marriage of things that I was into. And what I love about TUG, specifically the Chronosexual, is it brings in sort of the sci-fi and historical adventure elements, which are clearly well researched. I will say this is one of those like porn comics or erotic comics where you've got some great material that you're working with and mixing in. I mean, you deal with Caligula in a way that was like obviously not just, oh, I watched that Claudius, or I like you or sorry, not Claudius, Caligula, like the movie, like you clearly did your homework, right?
I did. I did some research,
and that's cool because nothing bores me more than, I mean, we all like porn, right? But nothing bores me more than just porn. Like, I need the story. I am one of those gays that loves porn with story, like whether it's straight or gay. I love that. I want to see that. And even if the story is like ridiculous, and especially honestly if it's ridiculous, right?
Yes.
So I really appreciate that you did that, because I would hand somebody Tug and say, look, I hope you're not offended. I mean, I would just give it to like anybody, right? But like, it's a good story. It's interesting. It's not just an excuse to have sex, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I appreciate that.
What you're saying is music to my ears. I totally love that. Like, I mean, I really want it to be a good story. If you removed the porn from it, it would still be a great story. If you just kept the porn in it, I hope that it would still be a good porn. So, but really bringing them together, that's, that was my goal. So great if that's what you got out of it.
I think that there's this idea that like erotic novels, erotic literature, erotic comics is this other thing. And yet when you look at, like, you read an erotic novel specifically where it's just words, a lot of that is what you would see on like an HBO series. Like, we were watching, my boyfriend and I were watching Lovecraft Country, and there's a lot of fucking in that show. Game of Thrones, you name it, HBO series, there's a lot of fucking, right? It's almost like a requirement, I feel like. And like, it's not that different from what you would get with erotica, where it's a good story, really interesting character development and settings and just everything. Oh, and then there's fucking too. So like, it's so funny that a lot of times in our culture, we otherize queer or erotic comics specifically, whether it's straight or gay or whatever. But it's like, this is the same kind of stuff you would get. Maybe it's dialed up a little bit more with class comics historically, and your work included, but that's fine. It's good though. And it's necessary. I feel like there's nothing that should keep somebody from exploring it and enjoying it for that reason,
I didn't realize how much I would enjoy making porn comics, honestly. Like, I know I'd have a lot of fun if I was just making, general audience sort of stuff too, but it's so liberating. And it's so, there's something about Tug too. Is like, I want to make sure that it's my dream that, I really like that there's a gay community, and I hope that never sort of falls apart, with gay marriage and everyone sort of integrating gayness into society. It's sort of, it almost feels like it's, like the bars are disappearing slowly, and, like everything's sort of, evaporating slowly. I still feel like there will always be a place for some real like gay camaraderie, and I want to like make sure that sort of comes through in my comics too. Like, I think there's something about that bond that gay people have, that just because they're gay and they're like, situation they're in, and they're a minority. They're always going to be a minority, I would guess, anyways. Anyways, so I just like, there's something about that I really want to make sure comes through as well. Like that, sticking together, the idea of like, we've got to like stick together and fight whatever comes at us if we have to, But there's more to it than just that. It's like just a common bond that I really, really like and want to communicate. So.
Queer relationships are so interesting in that they can start from so many different angles. And whereas, queer relationships can start with a hookup. They can start with a date and then become exes, but you still kind of keep in touch. Like more so than I think straight and heterosexual like relationships, where there's like this hard line that just keeps the people you fuck from the people who you're friends with. But the queer relationships are just not that hard. It's blurry. It's absolutely blurry. So like the community is bonded together in so many different ways that I do think your work touches on that. I mean, there's the old man character. I don't know if that's his name, but Tug calls him Old Man.
I went with totally generic names for everyone in this book. Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's a relationship that again, I've only read the Chronosexual #1, so I don't know if there's a backstory or a history, but like that's a relationship that sort of seems like they're close and intimate in certain ways, but they're not together, right? With a capital T. And then you got the Roman guard who's sort of in a relationship-y kind of thing and seems like they might have feelings and all this. But then Tug is a free agent and he's fucking all kinds of other people.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, I brought up duality earlier. There was another reason why I wanted to combine the two. It's something that always fascinated me about closeted gay people, and like gay people who remain in the closet until like they're, really old or whatever, and it's still happening.
Oh yeah.
Even though society has changed like crazy. But I was sort of in the first comics, first couple comics, anyways. Like, and I guess the third too, was really exploring that sort of idea of like how you can be one thing and believe another. Like you can be gay and do gay things, but still like identify as straight, or or like be horrified at the idea that someone might think of you as being gay or having done a gay thing or whatever. And I, like that's like it's that I've encountered people who really are like that. Like they're like totally like not like schizophrenic almost. Like it's a real strange thing to me. And even just people like I asked them like how like where were you at in your mind when you were still in the closet at 35 or whatever, and it still baffles me, like their answers. I mean, I totally respect it, and I understand, like it's so hard and so strange, and like the human mind is so complex, etc. But it's just so fascinating to me, and it happens so often in the gay community. And like, so anyways, like in the first comic, like Tug arrives on this farm where he meets all the characters that now that are traveling with him through time. And anyways, yes, I don't know where I was going. I can't remember.
Well, no, you have a cast of characters that clearly there's backstory, and so I do want to actually now go back and like catch up, right?
They were enemies. They were enemies at first. They were fucking each other, but they hated each other, and they were Tug basically outs them as gay to because he's a gay photographer. That's his job. Like it sort of talks about that in the backstory of in the Chronosexual. But anyways, and they basically want to kill him, and then that's where the adventure really starts, and it gets sucked into an alien. Spoilers. Sucked into an alien spaceship.
I mean, it's not a bad trope. It's a very useful trope. In fact, a lot of the stuff in specifically Chronosexual #1, it had just echoes of Doctor Who to me. And we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. And of course I had to grab my little, one of my little, props that I have near me here. You obviously drew at least some, even if it was a subconscious like idea of traveler in time and space. Right. Yeah. So, if anyone out there is looking for a erotic Doctor Who queer comic, I think this is perfect for you. I mean, he's got companions like we talked about. Yeah. He's got villains who he sometimes will this is the moment I think where it really like hit me with the Doctor Who connection. So and again, spoilers to a point with the first issue, right, of Chronosexual. We're trying to like give you some mystery, but also we're going to talk about it, right? For people who are upset by that. There's a Minotaur that Tug has to entertain, let's say. Not entirely against his will, but he's restrained. Let's just, and he gets it's this like ambiguous. Delightfully so, right? But like there's this moment when he explains who the Minotaur was and how he's like this alien refugee that he was able to connect with because of the alien connection and all that. So like that was a moment when I was like, oh my God, there it is. The Doctor, aka Tug in this case, is like seeing through and not just otherizing the villain, the monster, but actually like going, oh, I know what your story is. and connecting. And then, so it was delightful. It was really a nice note for me, set in ancient Rome, to have this very Doctor Who kind of, and I'm sure there's other stories that do this. It's not just Doctor Who, but Doctor Who for me, right? Touchstone. So is Doctor Who something that you've enjoyed over the years?
I cannot deny that I really love Doctor Who. I kind of lost track at around Matt or whatever. What the hell's his name?
Oh my gosh. The 11th Doctor.
All the old ones though. The old ones I've watched over and over and over.
Who's your favorite Doctor from the classic Who then?
Peter Davison, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he was kind of my Doctor. I love him. I love him actually because he's the only one that I feel, except maybe initially for the first few episodes, wasn't trying to be Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Everyone else seems to be trying to be Tom Baker, and I love Tom Baker. He, like, it's hard for me to choose. I just love Peter Davison just because that's just my Doctor.
I feel like in a lot of ways you would enjoy Peter Capaldi of the new Doctors, because everyone was trying to be David Tennant. Well, everyone. Matt Smith, now I remember his name. Came in and was trying to kind of be a little bit Dave Tennant, a little bit just other, right? But then Capaldi comes along and goes, I'm not doing any of that. We're going, actually, it's a very much kind of a throwback to the classic Who, not just in the age, but in the seriousness, but with still modern storytelling and everything else. So I think you'd enjoy the Capaldi era now knowing this a lot. But yeah, so that's great to see that influence, because I mean, there is, I'm sure, plenty of great slash fic out there of the Doctor having sex with aliens and his companions, and who knows.
Shockingly, I've never run across any. I would think I would have. I'd run across.
I might have written some of that. I don't know. I'm just,
We'll talk after.
We did actually have some comments in here real quick while we have a little break here. Limanito, hello, welcome, and we appreciate your smiling face. And our buddy from Class Comics, Robert Fraser, masterfully. I think this was in reference to how you tell stories, and of course it is masterfully. And then also, Tug has evolved so much as a character, and that's what you want. Like, both as a writer, you want to see, growth and all that, but as a character, you want to see evolution and growth. You don't want a character to just, that's one problem with the Doctor, really, is it's sort of a static, like the Doctor is the Doctor, and it's the companions you have to evolve and change, whereas the Doctor has to stay the Doctor, and that's not always exciting. So I think Tug is an interesting character, and I'm thrilled to go back now and sort of see his origins.
Yeah. Well, considering that Doctor Who's been going for like 50 years, they've done amazing keeping him entertaining for sure, him and her. I mean, I thank you. I love that everyone is feeling that way, anyways, or Fraser is, anyways.
Well, so what do you?
I do think I did definitely want to make sure that there was a change in the characters, like in the way the men related to Tug and the way Tug related to the men and stuff. So. It's a little weird now because there was a sort of a real completion to the arc in the first 3 comics. And now, I am kind of a little concerned about okay, what do I do with Tug now that, what's his weakness exactly? Because he's kind of like this super guy now. He's a bit bumbling and he's not perfect, but he's done his arc, so I'm gonna have to think harder about this. I do have some ideas for sure, but yeah, I'm in a way I'm just kind of glad he's at this place where I can actually treat him like a Doctor Who kind of in Pornoland, meeting. I love the fact that now I'm at a point in the story that I can just sort of have him meet the most weird, sexually weird people of history and encounter these weird sexual ideas and and explore those things, because there's so much in history that's just so bonkers, and it's just when I was coming up with ideas of how am I going to use Caligula, because he did some there's some, am I allowed to swear on here? I guess
you can swear, yeah, please.
So there's totally fucked up stuff going on in the Roman times. I'm sure everyone who's watching this knows that. How do I insert that and not, have the Canadian government come after me because I violated some like rule or something, like gone way over the edge of, into like criminality or something.
You did a good job though. You had the horse there in a certain way. You
Well,
didn't go.
The horse is totally like, yeah, like you have to include him. There's just no way he's getting out of there.
But you didn't. You skated a very fine line, but you skated it well in depicting the madness and kind of explaining the madness of Caligula, which was interesting.
Right.
But you didn't glorify him, and you also didn't. I mean, he's a villain with really no redemption possible, which is sort of outside of his own agency. But that's fine. It's whatever. And yet, yeah, I don't know. I like the way you handled him. You didn't, like you said, you didn't glorify his more excessive in a the sadism. You didn't glorify that,
right?
Which is difficult because there's people who are into sadism. I was actually thinking, did you ever read Grant Morrison's The Invisibles?
No, I haven't. No.
So Morrison does this thing with the Marquis de Sade.
Yeah.
And so that's a common historical, sexy, kinky, whatever, that people have to like kind of handle very delicately, because obviously some of his stuff is very informative and very influential, but a lot of it's really messed up. Like,
yeah.
So,
I didn't even think that it would be an issue, but yeah, I had to really sort of think about how am I going to present these ideas, because like people who aren't familiar with history too might read this and be like, what the hell? like for example, like like in the beginning of the first story of Chronosexual, one of the guys says like, like it's not usually done where like the older man will allow the younger man to penetrate him, that sort of thing. And then it starts getting into like, I was trying to dance around the issue of like sex with minors, etc., like, because I did not want to get into that at all. But that's a weird and fucked up thing from that time that I could say that, that still is not going to get me in trouble with the government.
Yeah, pederasty in talking about the Roman times is always a fun topic, whether it's the strictly Roman discussions or like the Bible when it talks about pederasty. Like it is you skated that line very narrowly in a not bad way.
If I was writing a paper on the subject, fine, right? People understand why I'm saying these things, but if I'm putting it in the context of a porn comic, yikes, you got to like watch out what you do. So
let me ask you something about that then. And again, this is just me thinking like, erotic and porn. So with like other genders like transgender, are there any or even like, non-binary, are there any type of gender identities and sexuality that you would feel comfortable writing or exploring in the future for TUG?
Absolutely. I want to touch on as many different things as possible like that. And I also want to make sure that if I do it, I include people who have had that experience so that I know that I'm getting it right. I don't want to just like wing it. So I haven't really dug into doing anything like that yet. I mean, I haven't really fleshed out anything for the next few comics. I have ideas, but like I'm trying to be inclusive with, with different, ethnicities, and, I haven't done any, differing sexualities or anything like that. It's been pretty strictly gay so far, but I don't see any reason why I would want to stay that way for the remainder of, the comics that I do. I want to touch on as many things as possible and like explore attitudes towards it, and like, and all the like weird, struggles and trauma that might come up because of any of these things. So.
Well, I like that you talk about like making sure you have authentic representation and you vet it with people from those communities, because that's the golden, like not the golden ticket, it's the golden rule, right? If you're going to write from any of those perspectives, at the very least, you got to vet it. So that's great. I mean, I think it's important these days to have more representation. And I think it's very interesting because it gives you more possibilities as a writer. I feel like what we don't want is the fear of exploring that. And so, especially in a porn or erotica context, it's just something that we need more of to make it more available and not normalized, but just, available and out there. So I think that's really great. And again, just more colors to play with, like more ideas, more permutations, like, yes.
Yeah. More interesting. Yeah, exactly. More stuff to explore, more. The second story actually I did, is in a sort of a Tibetan monastery and stuff. So with that story, although I really wanted to do it because, of course, I'm like dealing with issues of, Eastern philosophy, etc. It made sense to put it in that context. But I also had to make sure, after I started doing it, I'm like, oh crap, like I don't want to like make Tug seem like some sort of like savior or something, like the white savior, like go down that road either.
Right.
So I'm being very careful and conscious about like making sure that, there's mutual help, etc. Like, of course, he's from the future. He is who he is. He has a lot of extra knowledge, etc. But I don't want him to be just like coming in and help saving the day all the time. And he may not always save the day either. Who knows what's going to happen. But
I mean, again, that's very like learn the lessons from the doctor, right? The doctor shouldn't save the day all the time. In fact, he should sometimes make it worse. Not that that's an easier story. I think that's a harder story to tell well. Yeah. But at the same time,
pretty tantalizing if you ask me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's again, it opens more possibilities. So let's talk about your art style, because and you're relatively, like, how long have you been doing this comics for? Like 6 years?
No, like about 10 or 11 years now, actually. Yeah. I mean, I took a long break here. Like this comic didn't come out. The last comic I did, maybe it came out 4 years ago, I think, or something.
Okay. Like what do you draw inspiration in like where in your style, which I will put the picture back up because it is beautiful and it's the only one I can share on here without
put your finger over whatever else you would show.
I do have one more picture when we talk Beautiful Dead, but like I had to blur bits. That was my fun little like last second. Oh God, I got to blur bits. So like, where's your style? Like, what are your influences? How did you kind of arrive at this this kind of style of storytelling?
When I started heading in the direction of doing comics, I mean, I've always read some comics. Like I was really into Savage Sword of Conan, and I've always loved heavy metal.
Oh yeah.
That's the stuff I carried on from, when I was a kid until I was an adult. Like, unlike some other, stupid comics like Archie or whatever. And then once I started on this stuff, I started heading into comic stores more, and I really fell in love. I don't usually buy comics, but I buy graphic novels, and I really, really, really love pretty much everything from Humanoids Publishing, and it's more European stuff. There's a few names that really stood out to me. I mean, Mobius is somebody who I knew when I was a kid, like, and up until now, but it seems kind of silly to say Mobius because everyone says Mobius, but
it's still like, I don't, especially younger comics fans don't know about Mobius at all.
Yeah. So. Yeah. There's another guy, Fred Beltran, actually, who, I mean, I love Mobius, but Fred Beltran really just like grabbed my heartstrings. Like I love, it's so quirky and weird and sexy still at the same time. Like, and there's another guy too, Serpieri. I don't know how to say his name. I've only ever read his name, if I've ever read it. He made the comic Druna, Druuna. I think it's W, anyways. And it's like sort of an erotic, like lightly erotic, well, maybe not so lightly, straight erotica. And he's amazing. If you have not seen his stuff, it's just so weird. It kind of has these Doctor Who vibes. Like if you took out Doctor Who and like just these strange characters and strange situations, and it's totally beautiful. I actually have a few comics. Who else did I? A few comics here.
I'm trying to find a picture of Druna that is again usable and not unlike your work. I mean, it's all very sexy. Okay, I think this will be okay. I'll get this up here. Oh no, maybe not. It is really good though. I love this.
Awesome. It's just, yeah, I love the style. I love it.
Okay, I think I can share this. Hold on. I'm going to share this for our viewers here. Cause, oh man, this is, okay. I think that we can handle that amount of butt.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's a totally mental alien that,
yeah, some of our other fans and even people on our show will love that. Oh, also, it looks like James is familiar. Druna is one of the most beautiful drawn comics ever, but so problematic. Oh, okay.
Well, it isn't. Yeah, it is problematic.
Okay.
But I love the art. It's so fucking wonderful. Yeah, I agree. It is.
Oh, and I guess it's Sir P. Airy is what James is saying.
Sir P. Airy. Yeah. Okay. Great. I totally bungled it.
Yeah, trust me. We all have those moments when all we've ever done is read something, and in our mind, it is what it is, and then we say it for that first time, and someone's like,
"Right?
Who?
Yes.
Oh, you mean so?" Anyway,
I brought some comics here to show. Like,
oh yeah,
Druna's definitely one that influenced me like crazy at the time. So where is it? Trying to find a good Beltran one. Here we go. Okay, so this is Beltran.
Oh.
He's more of a straight artist, I get the impression.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, this doesn't do it justice to see it here, but if you ever get the opportunity, check out the Techno Priests and Megalex. And it's stuff that just blew my mind. It's so beautiful.
Were those published in 2000 AD or are they there? Oh, Jodorowsky. No wonder. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when you started talking about Inhumanoids and all that, I was sitting there like, oh, you're gonna touch on like my favorite crazy director Jodorowsky here any second. Yeah. Well, with the Mobius connection and then Inhumanoids, yeah.
He has his finger on everything, it seems like. Yeah. And then there's this other guy too, Segrels.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen their stuff.
It's a little bit too
shiny, but like it kind of gives me a Frazetta vibe a bit.
Every damn panel is like painted, and it's like just perfect. You can't. Yeah, and actually these editions too come with like backstory on how he actually came up with the world and constructed the world, and it's like as densely thought out as you might think. Do work for a movie or something. Like it's like every damn building and has some details in there that you would just never think that he went to that extent.
I love comics that have that depth where you come back and you read it later and you're like, oh my God, I missed this. How did I miss this? This whole thing. Do you know Brandon Graham, that writer or artist? So he's out of Portland, and his work is like that. It's not visually the same, but it has that depth of detail and reference. And it's also very sexy. If you follow Brandon Graham on his Twitter or his Instagram or whatever, Patreon probably, he does a lot of sexy pinup stuff. He's also straight, but really good stuff. One of my favorite cartoonists. That's very not, even though he's done mainstream like Marvel DC stuff, he's very not that normally. He does Image and other. So that's cool. It's so cool. I love all those influences, and it also tracks completely with your style, which is really cool. I love seeing that, like that influence, and yet yours is I don't want to say more polished, but yours is it feels more Western Western American or Canadian, I should say. Well, American in the continent, right? It has that influence, but it isn't that. It's something else.
Right.
So I like that. I like that. You're because you color your own stuff too, right?
Yeah, I do everything. Yeah.
Your coloring it's beautiful. Like it reminded me, oh gosh, who was it? Like you use pastels in a cool way that don't like get garish, but they really add warmth,
right,
and just color that sometimes like human cartooning is so tan and boring and just like but your characters have so much warmth of color, and I really like that palette.
I tried to push myself out of the box for this comic, so this actually isn't normal for me. But I'm glad everyone seems to be loving the colors. I love like the print comic of this is just like blows my mind. I'm so happy with how it turned out. So
that's great.
It really pops. Yeah. There's an artist called Tropical Toxic that I follow on Instagram, and he's really quite wonderful. And he just pulls out some of the weirdest colors, but they just always appeal to me. I mean, he's definitely not the only artist that does crazy kooky colors. And I mean, I think it's, like I think some of the more like Image Comics goes in that direction a little bit more, etc. So, I don't think I'm doing anything new, but it's new for me. So I'm with it.
And I'm not going to demean what Class or other erotic comic publishers do at all. But I think your stuff stands out in that it is so well balanced with other color influence material, like we talked about. Like it is a heightened kind of erotica that is sexy and enjoyable from that perspective, but also just really, really interesting. So, I mean, again, anyone who has any interest in anything we're talking about right now, you should go to classcomics.com. You should at least get the PDF, which is only like $4.95, it's not even like, it's like, most like Marvel, DC, whatever, is like 20 pages these days. This is like 30 or 40 almost pages. It's a thick book for a little under $5. And it's a great deal.
It's only, you mean my comic? Oh yeah. No, it's just a regular comic. Oh. It's just I've just packed a lot of stuff onto one page.
You know what? I might be going by the PDF page numbering since I did a PDF, and the way it numbers the pages, it was like, oh, and the other thing, I will give Class Comics this. There's another piece to this. So there's a lot of back matter, both yours and advertising, but it's not the bad kind of advertising. It's probably the kind of advertising if you buy an erotic comic, you're gonna appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if that's in the print version, but like, there's just this like, it's probably like a good few pages of just like ads for porn. Yeah. And again, if you're looking for this material and you enjoy the sexy form of a male.
Yeah. No, it's not in the print comic. No. Yeah. No, the print comic is totally just focused on the story and the art. So yeah.
Well, it's really fun. And I don't know like which comic stores, LCSs and even queer bookstores still carry Class Comics. I would hope somewhere here in Seattle and in Vancouver, you can go and find this on the shelf, but having that PDF option is so important, for distribution, right?
You used to be able to find Class Comics at Little Sisters, but I'm not sure. They don't sell them anymore. I think partly because everyone would like rifle through them, and then they ended up so they get destroyed, and then they ended up putting them behind the till, and then no one could look at them anymore. So I think, but the print that they're doing now is like pretty durable. You could almost take it into a bathtub with you. I wouldn't do that.
I would totally do that. That's a great idea.
I've been thinking, getting them laminated. It's a good idea. Yeah. They're not quite to that standard, I don't think, but close. And like I think, they're just beautiful. You have to, if you're into comics, I would suggest you get the print.
I have read many a comic in the bathtub. The bathtub is very important to me. So, oh my God, that's great. jizz-proof covers. So we'll challenge our friends at Class Comics that we need proof. If some young OnlyFans content producer wants to demonstrate this, I think that'd be great marketing.
Yeah, I think so.
Also, we have a comment from Robert Chandler. The digital version is beautiful too. It's really nice to zoom in on the stunning art. Absolutely. Oh my god, I was pinched.
Yeah, good point. You can zoom in. Yeah.
I have gone full digital in my comics, and I have never looked back. Like I have a big wall of graphic novels and whatnot, but when I moved out here to Seattle, I got rid of like 99% of my physical books, with only a few exceptions. Some, whatever's mementos, things that were dear to me, but like all of it is digital now, and it is glorious. I don't have to worry about finding issues in a long box. I know where they are on my tablet or on my wherever. It's glorious. But yeah. So let's talk about Beautiful Dead, because I also want to give this a little bit of a time and love. And this is your series with Robert Fraser, right?
Yeah.
Very delightfully inspired, lovingly, I would assume, by Walking Dead.
Yes.
I mean, if it's not clear.
Yeah.
What was it like adapting Robert's script, and what was your process? Right? How did you was it sort of a equal Marvel style kind of thing, or was it more of straight up like script? Okay, now draw it. Like, how did you work with Robert on this?
Fraser was incredibly patient because I am so freaking slow. So he basically handed me a script, and I really loved it. And we batted some ideas back and forth about it as well. So it changed a bit along the way. And yeah, I don't know. That's what came out. So
what so I've read the second issue, which again I missed out on the.
You didn't read the first one. Okay.
I need to go back.
Yeah.
But I mean, the second one's got a lot of interesting story ideas, and the nice thing about these issues is you don't need a lot of catching up to at least know where you're going. Like it's a Walking Dead moment in a car, let's say, where two characters are fucking, and then zombies or zombie-esque naked people. I mean,
Yeah. I something about Beautiful Dead. I was just thinking is the zombies themselves. That was a place, like I said earlier, that I like doing stuff a little bit, that hasn't been take a path that hasn't quite been trodden. But you'll notice the zombies actually have a bit of a different kind of a lifespan than most zombies that you would encounter. Fraser initially, when he gave me the scripts, it was more of a straight up zombie show. And I sent him some pictures of just sort of these sort of mutations and these zombies getting more and more crazy, and he liked them, so that's sort of where we went. So I'm really proud of those creations that we came up with. So yeah.
Yet there is a moment where I think is it Hayden is the blonde character, right? Yeah. And he's seemingly devoured or about to be devoured by this, like you said, sort of this amalgam of a bunch of zombie forms into this creature. So right. That was a cool, I didn't expect that at all. Again, just thinking from that Walking Dead sort of adventure or whatever, zombie adventure, that was something that was out of Akira or some other right. thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't just a straight up zombie trope, but yeah.
No, I like it. And again, it's sexy. There's lots of fucking, although I think Tug's probably got more fucking than Beautiful Dead, thinking back just roughly. But either way, they're both fun and sexy. And again, it's a zombie thing. Characters are in peril, yeah, it's all of that. So it was fun. It's a fun ride. Are there more? I mean, I assume both. I know Tug, you've talked about having other plans, but is there more Beautiful Dead that might be coming?
I wasn't actually even going to do Beautiful Dead 2, but I ended up doing it because I had so much fun with the first one. But the more I'm doing, I just felt like, okay, I'm gonna have to stop at this point just because I have other stories in my mind, like Tug. I want to keep going with. I've like another one or two ideas that I want to head forward with, and I'm so slow that it just didn't make sense for me to like just continue with that. So
Okay.
I loved working on it, but yeah, I probably won't be continuing it. I mean, it's at a point where I'm hoping they'll continue with it because I think it's just so fun.
Well, Fraser said that you were a dream to work with, so I think the door is open if you wanted to change your mind. But no, it's exciting though, and it's, I mean, it's really important. You do such a good job storytelling your own material, but obviously you bring a lot to other people's, ideas and material that they want you to illustrate. So that's always, I think that's more of an interesting relationship as a collaborator than as a, all right,
I had some fun collaborating, but I think, yeah, like lots of people ask me if I want to work on their comics. I'll mention no names, but that's in reference to an earlier conversation. But yeah, I just can't. I gotta get my own stories out there. I feel like time is ticking, and I just like, if I don't do this, then it's never gonna happen.
Amen to that. Also, Robert Fraser, there will be more Beautiful Dead. Good. And maybe you'll do the cover.
I would do the cover. Yes, absolutely.
I think that would be spectacular, and it would sell loads, if you will. Pardon the pun. I apologize. So I did note in your work some pop culture. I mentioned it briefly. Are you a Drag Race fan, or are you like, tell me about some of your pop culture besides Doctor Who? Like, are there any other things that you kind of really are into that you're trying to sort of find a place to weave in?
I watched one season of Drag Race. I actually have such a trouble watching any reality TV. Just watching anyone like be mean to each other.
it's yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah. And competition, actually, I'm totally weird about competition. I do not like to compete. I do not like watching people compete. Yeah, it really, I just feel so bad for the people who are losing. So yeah, it's funny. So anyway, so reality TV, no. Pop culture, I'm trying to think like anything that's in particular that I focus on. I've never been much of like a superhero comics guy. I've delved into a bit. I mean, I love Marvel movies. The MCU is cool.
Have you been watching WandaVision?
I did. I watched it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I totally love it. It's totally fun. But I think at the core of me is like just hard science fiction. I mean, like I said, I love Doctor Who. The old ones anyways. More recently, I've been watching, I love Walking Dead, actually. I never thought I would like Walking Dead. Fraser got me into it, and I fucking love it. I'm still watching it to this day. They're going into their last season. I don't know if anyone realizes that anymore. Every time I brought it up, no one else seems to know that it's even happening anymore. But
yeah, it's kind of gotten away from the cultural focus that it had, and I wonder. I think it was pre-pandemic that things were starting to kind of go that way, but especially in the pandemic, I don't think people want to watch like The Stand or zombie they don't want to watch probably anything apocalyptic.
I actually watched Contagion at the very beginning. If you've ever seen that movie, it was great. Actually, it was kind of helpful. It made me feel so bad about what is happening.
Nobody got it right. Nobody got it right.
I'm really into The Expanse. I'm so excited about that. The Expanse.
I think that is the best hard sci-fi show of all time.
It's fantastic, and it's so underappreciated. It really, really is. Yeah, I hope more people catch on. I think they will over time, but
it's like you thought that Battlestar Galactica with Ron Moore was like, oh, this is really good sci-fi, and it was. It mostly, but then The Expanse comes along and just
amazing. Yeah, totally amazing. The space battles and everything. Snowpiercer, I've really, really loved lately.
I didn't think I was gonna dig it because have you read the graphic novel at all? Okay, so that is so different than the I forgot the director's name who did the movie but he did Parasite. Anyway, same director. I was surprised when I watched that. I've seen like the first like half of the first season.
Yeah.
That they steered it a little bit back towards the graphic novel, but not really,
Yeah.
but more with the class and
It's not as cartoony. It's not as they took it really seriously, and I love it for that.
Yes,
like
yes.
it's so preposterous, but they really made it work. Like they really sold it. I just love it. Like as far as science fiction and like, you know, political commentary and like
perfect timing. Yes.
Amazing. It's so good. It's so good. And it's on the second season now. I'd highly recommend finishing the first one. For sure.
Well, and David Diggs from Hamilton is a big character in it, and is Jennifer Connelly from Labyrinth and many other movies. So those two people alone are huge for me because I'm a huge Labyrinth fan, a huge Hamilton fan. So like that alone was compelling. But yeah, oh, it's great. It's really good, and it's on TNT, but it's on HBO Max. And so honestly, even though I was like, TNT, really? Because they don't always have a great track record for sci-fi. Yeah. But it's good, and it's again HBO Max, so you can watch it there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Pop culture. I'm trying to think. I know I'm going to think of 20 different things once we get off.
It's good, and I always like asking that because it kind of gives me sort of like things that are touchstones, whether or not they influence your work or not. Yeah, it's still cool to like know what that is, and
I definitely kind of fluctuate between, and this may be relevant for things that are coming in the TUG universe. I fluctuate between hard sci-fi and like hard fantasy, if that makes any sense. Like,
sure,
Tolkien, you know, just that kind of stuff. I totally get off on that too. So, especially if they've really crafted the world well, if it all has like some coherence to it, like it makes sense internally, and you can see it and feel it, I love it. I actually don't like. Should I say this? Should I say what I don't like? I'm going to say I don't like Harry Potter very much.
Shocking. I mean,
I just felt like it was just like popcorn. Like it
is.
Now there's like a magic spider. Now there's like a unicorn. Like I don't.
His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman was really what that should have been the Harry Potter moment.
Mm-hmm.
But it was too complicated and I think too subversive.
Yeah.
And then Harry Potter rolls along and just like blows up YA and all this other crap, but it's really kind of bland.
Yeah, it was just too crazy. I mean, I didn't get that far into it. My understanding is that it gets a little more.
The further you go in, it does. Yeah, it gets a little more interesting, but so I think it kind of ages with the reader to some extent in an interesting way. If you start kids young and have the first book, and then but there's so many issues with rolling and everything these days that I've definitely soured on the Harry Potter from when I read it initially. Well, let me wrap up with this, but I'm going to make sure I give everyone a chance to go check your website out, butchmclogic.com, where you can find all of your social media and links to buy TUG. And if you also want to just go straight to classcomics.com, you can buy TUG, Beautiful Dead, and all of it PDF. So really easy to download on your tablets, watch.
My website just directs you directly to Class Comics. So yeah, just go straight there too. Yeah.
And no, I'm excited for more of this. I really, really, really hope that when Comic Cons are a thing again, and maybe even a West Coast gay Comic Con, not unlike BentCon rather, comes back and we have something like that. I really, really would love to see your smiling face.
I swear to God, there's something that's come up since. I mean, I haven't really been paying a ton of attention, but I swear there's something.
If there is, I look forward to finding out more about it, because now that I'm on the West Coast, I want to go.
I'll meet you there, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Oh, totally. Absolutely. I'm so sad when I talk to like Justin Hall or Zan Christensen or any of like the crew, Andy Mangles, like all of the crew from back in like the BentCon era and all that. Dave Davenport, like it sounded like such a fun time, and I'm so sad I missed all of those years.
Yeah, I went twice. I had the time of my life. I totally loved it. I loved everyone I met. Oh my God. Yeah. So
real quick before we wrap up, thank you, Robert. Thanks for such a candid and interesting conversation. I guess I
hope so.
You were candid. That's good. And Robert Chandler, thank you. The whole TUG series is so excellent, and I am excited to go back and explore more of it. But again, Butch, thank you so much for your time. It really is a pleasure. And I hope we can catch up again very soon when the second issue of the Chronosexual, TUG the Chronosexual, is out.
The pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.